Have you ever really stopped to think about the incredible power a single young voice can actually hold? A voice that doesn't just speak truth to power, but like actively reshapes how we all talk about human rights, about education. And what if that voice belonged to a girl who, facing just terrifying odds, chose courage, chose to speak out when silence really seemed the only safe option? Today, we're going to do a really profound deep dive into I Am Malala. It's the autobiography of Malala Yousafzai, which she co-wrote with the journalist Christina Lamb. And honestly, this isn't just a book, is it? It's more like a testament to human resilience and, well, a catalyst for change around the world. Change we're still seeing today.
Absolutely. And our mission today really is to get past the headlines you already know.
Yeah.
We want to pull out the most important, maybe even surprising bits from Malala's very personal story and the huge impact of her advocacy. So we'll explore not just what happened, but really dig into why her story struck such a chord globally, and how it's still driving action for education and equality.
Right. And we're drawing our insights directly from the book itself, from her autobiography.
Yeah.
It gives us that firsthand account, doesn't it? You get her whole remarkable story, right from her childhood in Pakistan's Swat Valley, all the way to becoming the youngest ever Nobel Peace Prize laureate. So to really understand Malala, I think we need to start right at the beginning. Let's paint a picture of her life in Mingora, Swat Valley. It's described as beautiful, sure, but also pretty unstable, politically speaking. What was her early life actually like, according to the book?
Well, what's immediately striking is how her childhood was kind of both idyllic, but also really steeped in these deep cultural complexities. Malala describes her home as being just full of books, always buzzing with activity from her father's school, the Kushal school, and lots of political chat. But the really fascinating part, I think, is her father, Ziauddin Yousafzai. He wasn't just a school teacher. He was a poet, an activist, and someone who, right from when Malala was born, kind of pushed against traditional Pashtun norms. He put her name on the family tree, usually just for boys, and he openly celebrated how smart she was. And this foundation, it was extraordinary. It gave her not just a love for learning, but this deep sense, even from a young age, that education was power. Power to shape your life, power to challenge injustice.
That does sound like a wonderful start, yeah.
Hey,
All that intellectual freedom. But like you said, the book shows this dark shadow looming. The Taliban's rise in Swat changed everything. We know they banned girls' schooling. That's widely reported. But what were some of the other, maybe more subtle day-to-day changes Malala saw? Things that really capture how chillingly her community transformed.
The book details it so vividly. How quickly this lively, open place became, as she puts it, ruled by fear and violence. It wasn't overnight, exactly. It sort of crept in. First, you had these mullahs on the radio preaching against anything they deemed un-Islamic. Then came public floggings, destroying CD shops. And then the outright bans. Music, TV, and yes, the crucial one, girls' education. Malala writes about the fear just hanging in the air. Constant surveillance, girls hiding their school books under their shawls just to get to class.
Why?
It was really a systematic dismantling of their culture, their identity. People started self-censoring, living in constant fear. It wasn't just rules. It was about erasing joy and freedom. And we see it all through her eyes as a child.
It's just horrifying to imagine that kind of shift. So rapid, so fundamental, and yet, even as a young teenager, Malala wouldn't be silenced. This is where it gets really interesting for me. She starts writing that blog for BBC Urdu under a pseudonym, Gul Makai, fearlessly describing the Taliban's oppression. What pushed her to do that, and how did that secret act start to sort of change her?
Well, deciding to blog, and it was initially with her father's encouragement, but then she really took it on herself. It was just an act of immense courage. And the name, Gul Makai, meaning cornflower, it's from a Pashtun folktale. So it adds this layer of cultural resistance.
She wrote about the fear, definitely, but also about these small acts of defiance, like girls still meeting secretly to read, that hunger for knowledge that just couldn't be put out. Her posts weren't just news reports, they were deeply personal. They humanized the conflict. And connecting this to the bigger picture, this blog, plus the few interviews she did, without showing her face.
Right.
It quickly turned her into this powerful symbol of resistance against extremism.
Yeah.
She wasn't just listing events. She was articulating these universal human rights that were being trampled on, giving a voice to so many others who couldn't speak.
It's an incredible transformation from schoolgirl to activist. But then the story takes that turn everyone knows, that absolutely terrifying turn. The book goes into the chilling details of the 2012 assassination attempt. We know she was shot, obviously. But what specific details from the book about the attack or the immediate aftermath really highlight the sheer brutality and, I guess, the miracle of her survival? Yeah, the book puts you right there, on that school bus, the gunman asking, "Who is Malala?" The confusion, then that single shot. But it's more than just the event itself. It really digs into what happened next. The incredibly difficult journey to get her medical help inside Pakistan, the complex decisions her family and the doctors faced, getting her to the UK for specialized treatment, the sheer unlikelihood of surviving that kind of injury. Malala describes waking up in a hospital in Birmingham, disoriented, unable to speak, worrying about her family. These details are so important. They don't just tell a story of recovery, they show incredible resilience, both physical and spiritual, and also the huge global network that kind of sprang into action to help her. Her father, Ziauddin, he described it as walking through a dark tunnel. It really shows the immense emotional toll on the family, even with the hope.
And her survival, after all that intensive treatment, it really did mark a new chapter.
Yeah.
She didn't step back, did she? She
Yeah.
seemed to amplify her message even more. What does the book tell us about that shift? How did her personal trauma transform into this collective global action?
Her survival itself became her most powerful statement, in a way. She couldn't go home to Swat, but she refused to be seen as just a victim. She was a survivor with an even clearer mission. The book shows how, almost as soon as she recovered, she embraced this global platform. She co-founded the Malala Fund, dedicated to fighting for every girl's right to education.
Right, the fund.
And then that incredible speech at the UN on her 16th birthday, famously saying, "One child, one teacher, one book, and one pen can change the world." It wasn't just a local fight anymore. It became this universal call to action and this relentless advocacy all over the world. That's what led to the Nobel Peace Prize in 2014, youngest ever laureate. Her story truly became the symbol that personal suffering can be channeled into a powerful force for global good.
Thinking about her whole journey, it's so clear how her personal fight connects with these really big universal themes. Maybe the most central one, the absolute core of the book, is education as empowerment. How does Malala's story show this in a unique way? Beyond just, being able to read and write.
Well, the book really frames education as a form of, defiance. Intellectual and social defiance. Malala talks about how simply reading helped her question the Taliban's rules, seeing the contradictions between what they said and the actual teachings of Islam.
Interesting.
So it's not just about getting into schools, it's about the critical thinking, the self-worth that learning builds. It turns students into active citizens, not just passive listeners. She shows how education gives people the tools to challenge injustice, to understand their rights, to, write their own futures. It's about freedom of thought, really.
Absolutely. And her courage is just undeniable. But does the book give any sense of whether she or her family ever grappled with the huge personal cost? Maybe even wondered if silence might have been easier, at least in the short term?
Yeah.
How does it show that internal struggle, that resilience?
That's a really important question, actually, because resilience isn't about never being scared. It's about pushing through that fear, right?
Right.
And the book definitely doesn't sugarcoat the threats they faced. Malala writes about her mother's constant worry, her father's own moments of despair, especially when they got specific death threats. And while Malala herself often comes across with this almost unwavering determination, there are moments where she admits feeling terrified, sad about leaving home, the heavy weight of it all. So her resilience isn't shown as a lack of fear. It's shown as choosing courage despite the fear. And that's fueled by this incredibly strong belief in her cause and, crucially, the support of her family. It's an internal battle just as much as an external one.
And looking beyond her own story, I Am Malala is such a powerful lens on women's rights and equality, especially in her cultural context. What specific insights does the book give us on the kind of systemic discrimination women face there? And how does her fight for education connect to those bigger issues?
The book gives a really nuanced picture of the challenges in strongly patriarchal societies. Malala talks vividly about purdah, the custom of women staying veiled, out of sight, about the deep-seated expectations for girls to be quiet, stay home, marry young. She even shares personal things, like her grandmother being disappointed when she was born, wishing she'd been a boy, so her father championing her education. That was radical in itself. It directly challenged those norms. And the book makes it crystal clear. Denying girls education isn't just one policy. It's a systemic tool of control, tied directly to wider gender inequality that keeps women poor and voiceless. Malala basically argues that real equality has to start with equal access to knowledge.
And finally, there's this strong thread running through the whole book, a call for global awareness. How does her personal story manage to bridge those cultural gaps and make readers everywhere feel a sense of shared responsibility?
I think the power is in how deeply personal yet universally relatable her story is. Malal really invites you into her life, her home, her school, her fears, her dreams. By showing you the everyday beauty of her life before the Taliban and then showing you its brutal disruption, she creates this empathy that just cuts across borders. It
Yeah.
stops being an abstract political issue and becomes about a real girl who just wanted to learn. She kind of gently pushes readers to recognize the privileges maybe they take for granted, like just walking to school safely, and understand that this is still a desperate fight for millions. And that fosters this profound sense of shared responsibility. It makes the fight for universal education feel like our fight, collectively.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about the impact. How this book and Malala's story didn't just tell a story, but actually change things. Before Malala talking about girls' education in places like Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nigeria, it felt like something mostly discussed in academic circles or by NGOs, right?
Yeah.
How did her memoir push this conversation into the mainstream?
It really acted like a lightning rod, didn't it? It took an issue understood by experts and made it so human, so accessible, that it just became impossible to ignore. All of a sudden, like you said, at classrooms, book clubs, even policymakers were talking about why millions of girls are still denied the right to study.
Exactly.
Malala's personal story gave a face to the statistics. It moved the conversation from, dry policy papers to genuine, widespread concern and even outrage. This mainstream focus lifted girls' education from being just another development issue to a top-tier global human rights priority. It forced a much wider audience to pay attention.
And it also did something else really critical, I think. It humanized the struggle against extremism. News about the Taliban often felt abstract geopolitics, violence statistics. How did her story change that focus?
That's one of its biggest achievements, I'd say. It helped shift the narrative, like the outline says, from just fear of terrorism to compassion for its victims and urgency to fight for justice. Instead of seeing the Taliban as this faceless threat, readers saw their impact through the eyes of a 15-year-old girl who simply wanted to go to school.
Right. Such a simple, powerful image.
Exactly. Malala's story became this potent counter-narrative to extremist propaganda. It showed the intellectual and moral emptiness of those who want to deny knowledge. It made the consequences feel personal, relatable. It inspired not just fear, but empathy and a drive for peaceful resistance.
And beyond just changing minds, her voice clearly empowered a whole new generation of activists. What is it about her story that really clicks with young people, do you think? What inspires them to act?
Well, young people everywhere, especially girls, saw someone their own age defying this terrifying regime. Her refusal to back down proved that, age really isn't a barrier to making change.
Hmm.
The book absolutely sparked action. Students in Western countries started campaigns, raised money for the Malala Fund, formed advocacy groups, and just as importantly, girls in developing countries saw a role model, someone who'd faced the absolute worst, survived, and kept fighting with hope. Her message, one child, one teacher, one book, one pen can change the world, felt practical, achievable. It showed that lots of small actions together can create huge change, a kind of democratized activism for young people.
And this impact went beyond just individual inspiration, right? It reached right into policy, international action. Can you tell us more about how I Am Malala actually influenced global leaders and organizations?
Oh, absolutely. After the book came out, and especially after that incredibly moving UN speech, you could feel a real shift in the global conversation. Like the outline notes, world leaders pledged billions of dollars for education initiatives, really focusing on girls' education in conflict areas.
Oh, billions, wow.
Yeah. And the UN declaring July 12th, her birthday, as Malala Day, that was huge symbolically. It cemented her status as a global icon.
Right.
Governments started talking about girls' education much more visibly in their aid programs. They began acknowledging it as critical for peace, stability, economic growth. The book really provided that moral and emotional push needed to get politicians moving.
And besides the policy impact, the book's success directly fueled the Malala Fund. It turned that narrative power into real-world projects. What kind of work does the Malala Fund actually do? What's their approach?
The Malala Fund works tirelessly to make sure every girl gets 12 years of free, safe, quality education. But it's not just about, say, building schools. They support local educators and advocates, people already working on the ground, ensuring the solutions fit the local culture and can last.
That makes sense.
They have programs in places like Nigeria, Pakistan, India, Syria, Brazil, tackling barriers like poverty, war, gender discrimination. And crucially, they amplified the voices of young women leaders themselves, recognizing that the people closest to the problems often have the best solutions. The book gave them the initial boost in funding to become this really effective global force.
Malala's story also triggered a big shift in cultural perceptions, didn't it? Both in more conservative places and around the world. What specific stereotypes did her story challenge?
Definitely. In many patriarchal societies, her story was a direct challenge to the idea that girls should be silent, stay indoors, be submissive. Her voice, echoing globally, was the opposite of that. And for readers everywhere, it completely shattered those common stereotypes about Muslim women being voiceless victims. Instead, here was Malala. Bold, articulate, intelligent, a Muslim girl actively rewriting the story about herself, her community, her faith. She showed that fighting for education isn't against religion, it's a universal quest for dignity and knowledge, often deeply rooted in faith.
And then, of course, the peak of all this impact, perhaps, was the Nobel Peace Prize. Youngest winner ever in 2014, just a year after the book came out. What did that award really symbolize?
It wasn't just about Malala personally. It symbolized the world finally, collectively, recognizing that education is the foundation of peace. It explicitly linked denying education, especially to girls, with the instability, conflict, and injustice we see globally.
Right, making that connection clear.
Exactly. The Nobel Committee, by honoring her, basically said, investing in education isn't just a nice thing to do, it's a strategic must-have for global harmony and development. It powerfully affirmed that her fight is fundamentally a fight for a more peaceful world.
So, thinking about all this, what does I Am Malala tell us about memoirs? As a genre, it clearly became so much more than just one person's story.
It really did. It kind of redefined what a memoir could do. It showed how incredibly powerful storytelling can be to spark empathy across cultures, turning one person's trauma into universal lessons. It powerfully showed how personal pain can be transformed into collective action, inspiring real change, not just reflection. And maybe most importantly, it proved that a single voice, amplified through a compelling narrative, can genuinely inspire activism on a global scale. I Am Malala isn't just looking back, it's a living call to action. It shows the extraordinary world-shaping power of autobiography.
And for you, listening, especially if you're younger, Malala was a teenager when she stood up to the Taliban. Her story is such a clear message that age is no barrier to courage or change. You don't have to wait. Your voice matters right now.
And for teachers, educators listening, this deep dive is such a potent reminder that your role is truly transformative. It's not just about instruction. It shows how nurturing one child's passion for learning can spark a global movement. It really highlights the incredible impact you have.
Absolutely. And for parents, Malala's father, Azzedine, played such a crucial, maybe sometimes overlooked role.
Yeah.
Her story really highlights how vital it is to support our children's dreams, especially our daughters. It shows how empowering girls leads to stronger families, stronger societies. It's about that quiet power of just believing in your child.
Definitely. And for women and girls everywhere, it's just this incredibly powerful story of resilience, of defiance. It encourages you to find your voice, use it against injustice, break down stereotypes, and fight for your rights, whatever the obstacles. Your voice counts.
And for leaders, policymakers, activists, the book holds up a mirror to global inequality in education. It offers not just motivation, but a deeply human reason to push harder for reforms, for funding, for truly universal, fair education.
And finally, for all of us, just as readers, it's so personal, yet so globally relevant. It builds empathy, broadens your perspective, helps you understand struggles far beyond your own daily life. It challenges you, really, to see the world and our connection to each other a bit differently.
So this deep dive into I Am Malala really shows it's so much more than a memoir. It's this powerful testament to the incredible power of education, the sheer resilience of the human spirit, and the amazing ability of even the youngest voices to spark change across the entire world.
Malala's journey really is this vivid reminder, isn't it? That one single act of courage, backed by unwavering belief in a basic right, can ignite a global movement, can shift how societies think. So maybe the question to leave you with is, what stands out most to you about the often underestimated power of just one individual voice? And thinking about your own life, your own community, what small, consistent act of courage could you take that might contribute, even in a small way, to that bigger picture of justice and equality for everyone?